It's time to start. So, yeah, let's start. Good morning, everyone. Before we start our materials, let me quickly go over a few announcements again. There will gonna be a quiz on June 4th, this Thursday, tomorrow. The quiz will gonna cover everything through today's class, and there will gonna be like five multiple choices question. And you will have like around like 20 minutes to complete it. So this is not a like long quiz, but make sure you review like all the concepts we've covered, especially the ideas rather than like just like memorizing definitions or something. Homework two is due today. This homework covers three chapters, so please don't wait until the last minute. And lastly, like midterm scores should be posted by this Friday. And once after like grades are released, feel free to reach out to me like if you have any concerns or questions. All right. Um, so like today we're gonna do two things. So like we're gonna move on to micro part. So we start with their like core ideas, and then like we're gonna move to the like trade and like comparative like advantages like this part. So, and honestly, like I think like comparative advantage is one of those like concepts that sounds really simple, but it explains like why countries like trades or why films are specializing, like like something like that. It will be really interesting. So let's start with a like, you know, first one. So I know like the first sentence like on a like slides, I already like use it like on our first class, but let's just like review it. So economic is the study of like how humans make decisions in the face of like scarcity. And the definition doesn't say money, right? A lot of people like just like think economic is just about money, like for example, what else? Like, stocks, bonds, like, like financially thing. But actually, like it is about like decision making. So scarcity means that like we cannot have everything we want, right? So we have like limited time, money, labor, natural resources, like something like that. So because like resources are limited, choices like become necessary as well. Mm, yeah, like let me give you an example. Like, you only have like 24 hours today, right? If you spend 2 hours like watching Netflix, you cannot spend those same 2 hours studying. Like scarcity like forces like choices, and economies like have developed like four principles like that help us like think about like these choices. And that four core principle is over there. First one is like cost benefit principle. Second one is like opportunity cost principle. And third one is like margin principle. And the last one is interdependence principle. So we're gonna like go each one because like you'll see like all this four showing up again when we talk about the trade. Yeah, so let's begin with the cost benefit principle. So here we say the cost and benefit principle are cost and benefits are incentives that shape like decisions, right? So when economists like think about like decision making, we usually begin with a very simple question. Like, is it worth like something like that? So like that is like really what cost benefit analysis is. Like, every decision has cost and also every decision has benefits. And rational people, we're gonna compare those two before making a choice, right? We do the same thing as well. Like suppose like your friend invites you to a concert tonight, like yeah, very famously one. Maybe the ticket costs like yeah, let's say like $50. And that's an obvious cost, like it is visible one, right? But there are also benefits. Like what I can think of is first, maybe you will have fun. and maybe you will spend time with friends, or maybe you will get to see your maybe favorite artist, like something like that. So economists like want us to like consider like all those things together. So yeah, that is it. And what makes it more interesting is not every cost or benefit has a dollar sign. So like it is not about like how much is like one extra hour of like sleep worth, how much is a fun weekend worth, how much is avoiding stress worth, like something like that. Um, I want to say like those things matter even though like they don't have like, market prices. And that is the reason like economists like use the idea of like willingness to pay. So willingness to pay means that the maximum amount you would be willing to give up in order to receive a benefit or avoid a cost. So you just like notice that I said maximum. So like this is not preferred, not idea. It is like just like maximum. Like so you gotta be aware like the difference between it. So for example, like yeah, maybe you would like to buy a coffee for maybe $3. But if you're super exhausted, like, and you haven't slept yet or something, probably maybe you would like still buy it for $5, right? So your willingness to pay might be like higher, might be actually higher than like what you'd prefer to pay. And that is like very important distinction. So I wanted to like, know the difference between willingness to pay and also want to pay. And economists like care about like willingness to pay because it helps us assign the value to things that are not naturally, measured in dollars. So whenever you're evaluating like your choice or something, like ask yourself like like what am I getting or what am I giving up or like what are the benefits worth the cost, like something like that. Now we are moving to one of the like most important concepts, opportunity cost. So if I asked you to remember like only one concept from today's lecture, it will be this. It might be actually this one. So opportunity cost is the value of the next best alternative like you give up whenever you make a choice. So let's think about this like carefully. Like suppose like tonight you have like three options. You can study because we have like, quiz tomorrow. You can also go to the gym or you can watch Netflix. And let's say we choose Netflix. Then what did it cost you? Like, have any ideas? We have like few students over here. Like, what did it cost you? Like, any volunteers?
Sorry, could you please repeat that?
So let's say we have like three options for tonight's plan. You can study or you can go to the gym or you can watch Netflix. And then let's say like we chose like, like Netflix. Then what did it cost you? What is like the cost of that?
Cost being able to study or watching Netflix. Oh, I'm
Amazing.
sorry, going to the gym. Yeah, one
Yeah.
of the other ones.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I get that. Like, but that is like really amazing because like I just like asked this because like many students like immediately like answer nothing because like they are not explicit like cost like over there. But actually like economists like we're gonna disagree about that. So you gave because like you gave up something actually. Maybe studying as he said, maybe sleeping, maybe working out, like maybe something else, right? So the opportunity cost is like whatever alternative like you value the most, like among the options like you didn't choose. So notice that like opportunity cost like doesn't have to involve money. Time is like often the biggest like cost like people face. So yeah, that is like really important to know. And one another cap concept like we should talk about is like sunk cost. A sunk cost is a cost like that has already occurred and cannot be recovered. So let's say like imagine like we got like our movie ticket for $20. Like and halfway through like the movie you realize like it is like super terrible. Like I want to leave. Then what should we do? Like many people will gonna think, I sometimes do as well. I already paid like $20, so I should stay. It sounds like reasonable. But actually like rational like economists would say the $20 is already gone. So whether you stay or leave, like it is already gone. It is already spent. It their logic is like it shouldn't affect the decision anymore because like only future costs or only future benefits should be matter. And that's why economists like ignore like sunk cost. Like we're interested in choices like going forward, like not mistakes made in the past, like something like that. So later in the economics, like we use something called like production possibilities frontier, which is PPF, like over there, to visualize this opportunity cost. They basically shows the trade-offs like that arise when resources are scarce. All right, third one. Let's talk about another word, which is marginer. Like I think economists like love the word marginer. So when economies like say marginal, like we simply mean it is additional. So one more, an extra unit, like or a small change, like something like that. So most people like think about like decision in all or nothing terms. But actually in economics, like we don't. So instead we ask like what happens if I do a little bit more? Like let's use study example again. So suppose you've already like studied like 3 hours for tomorrow's quiz. And like now you're asking yourself, like, like should you study 1 more hour? Like or something like that? And to answer these questions, we will gonna compare two things, which is margin benefit over there and marginal cost over there. So marginal benefit is the additional benefit from doing one more unit, and marginal cost is the additional cost. So maybe studying 1 extra hour increases like your exam score by, let's say, 10 points. That's a benefit, of course. But maybe it also means like you gonna losing sleep, right? And that will become a cost. So good decision making happens like when we compare those two. If marginal benefit is greater than marginal cost, we will gonna keep going. And if marginal cost like becomes larger than benefit, we have to stop. So the optimal point occurs like when marginal benefit equals to marginal cost, and this idea appears everywhere. I'm saying everywhere in economics. So firms, we're going to use it when deciding how many workers to hire. Consumers, we're going to use it when deciding how much to buy. Yeah, like something like that. Economists are constantly thinking about at the margin. And the last one is interdependence. So this one is like, I would say like the one like often overlooked, but very important, I would say. So interdependence like means that your best decision depends on other factors. Like kind of like makes sense, right? So in other words, like no decisions is an island, like your own choices affect other choices. Like suppose you wake up like early and go to gym, like that might influence what you eat later. Maybe you are more likely to choose like healthy lunch, like or protein, right? And also like one decision affect others. Like I'm sorry, other people's decision matter. So imagine like you on a coffee shop, like if that coffee shop next door lowers the prices, your decision might be changed too, right? Like third one is like development in other markets matter. I brought like interest rate increasing case. So even if you're not borrowing money today, like like higher interest rates can affect housing markets, like maybe investment decisions or even like consumer spending. The last one is like expectation about the future. So because we always like thinking about like our future opportunity, right? Why do we save money? Because like we're thinking about like our future consumption, like like something like that. So many economic decisions are really decision about the future. So like key lessons about like this point is like everything influences like something else. Now, finally, now with that, now that like we've reviewed like the foundations, like let's see these ideas. Like transition to trade, like now we're gonna like talk about like trade and like comparative like advantages. Yay, so exciting. So now we're gonna think about like really important question. So we talked about like scarcity, right? We talked about like, like resources are limited, time is limited, like skills are also limited. Then how can we become better off? Like, how can you produce more without like marginally like creating like more resources? Like when we don't have like, enough like resources. So economists like, have a surprising simple answer, which is trade. So trade creates like what we call like gains from trade. This is like whole term. So the idea is like that resources or goods and services can be reallocated to better use. So suppose I am really good at baking cookies. Nice. And one of you is really good at maybe fixing computers. Then could I learn like how to like fix computer? Yeah, of course I can try. Like you can try learn like how to bake as well. But like basic idea, like basic question like arises in this way, like but we should. Maybe not. If I spend like all day learning like computer repair or something like that, like that time, like I'm not spending baking, like which I'm really good at, right? And if you spend like all day baking cookies, like like that time you're not spending fixing computers. So instead of like that, like the idea is like I specialize in baking and you specialize in computer repair. Then we trade. Then like both of us have cookies and also computer services. Like neither of us had to become like expert at both things. This is like kind of like the key idea behind the trade. So like I want to say like trade is not about like one side winning or the other side losing. That happens because like both sides like expect to benefit. So if I didn't think like I was like better off, like I wouldn't agree to trade. But if you didn't think you were better off, like you wouldn't agree either. So like voluntary like trade usually means like both parties are kind of like better off, which is expect to gain. Then like how can I decide like who should do what? That is like also another good question, right? So how do I determine like who should bake or who should repair the computer? And that's where specialization like comes in. Like specialization is like based on like opportunity cost, I told you, right? So like notice like how opportunity cost is showing up again. Like economics like keeps coming back to the same idea, as I said. So before we get to like comparative advantage, like let's make sure we understand like two important terms over here. First one is like opportunity cost. We've already talked about this. Opportunity cost is the value of the next best alternative like you give up. That that's like, like going to be our most important tool. So Yeah, just like remember it. Second one is related, but different term. So it is called like absolute advantage. Absolute advantage is simply meaning that being able to produce more output using the same resources. So I'll give you an example. Let's say like we have like two students. So student A can write 10 pages of a paper in a day, and student B can write maybe 5 pages in a day. Who has the absolute advantage? Of course, the first one, right? Pretty straightforward, I would say. So, like, student A produces more output with the same amount of time. So, we say that, like, student A has, like, you know, absolute advantage. So, like, absolute, like, advantage, like, ideally like tells us like who is better, but it does not necessarily tells us like like who should specialize. Those are kind of like different questions, and that is the reason like we're using comparative advantages. So like comparative advantages like means that producing something at a lower co opportunity cost. This is where we use like opportunity cost. So like notice like how different that is from like the absolute advantage. We are not anymore asking, like who can produce more in absolute value. We're now asking who gives up less. So that's the question like economists like cares about. So let's think about like group project, like maybe homework or something like that. Maybe one student is excellent at writing, and maybe the other one is excellent at creating slides. Then could the writing student also making slides? Probably or probably not. So here is the thing, like, but if like persons specialize in what they do at a like lowest like opportunity cost, like the group becomes like more productive. They can finish it like more faster. And that's comparative like advantage. Um, yeah. So here's like one of the like most surprising research in economics you gotta know. So everyone has like a comparative like advantage in something. Even if like one person is better at everything, you know, I know like it sounds like a little bit strange, but a person can have an absolute advantage in every single activity, and we can still gain from like, like specialization and also trade. And this idea is like so important, like that economists like sometimes call it one of the most important idea. All right. So we're gonna see this like with simple example. So we have like Siri and Alexa. Siri can clean like 6 windows in 15 minutes and make 15 cookies in 30 minutes. And let's say like Alexa can like clean 5 windows in 10 minutes and make 40 cookies in 60 minutes. Right? And each person has like 3 hours. Like let's say like 3 hours is like our, limited time. So apparently like 3 hour is like 180 minutes available. So now before we do any calculation, let's think. Like looking at all these numbers, like can you immediately tell who should like specialize in what? Maybe not, right? Oh, you can say.
Okay. I think Alexa should
Mm-hmm.
make cookies
Mm-hmm.
and, well, I guess clean the windows too. But
Yeah, but I was like asking before we do like any calculation in the table. Like it is still like a little bit hard, right? So that is like why we need like, like a systemic method. Like we're gonna learn how to calculate, which I brought over there. So it'll be fun. So first thing like we're gonna do is determine like absolute advantage. Then we're gonna determine like comparative advantage. So First, what I do is I just like, convert their like times and like, like their values, like pieces, units divided by time so that like, we have like same units like across like all, things, assignments over there. And then what next to do is we're gonna like, calculate absolute advantage over there. So this is like not that hard. So like to know like to calculate absolute to say like who has like absolute advantage, like we need to know like maximum production over the entire, like 3 hour period. So for Siri, like if we spend like all 180 minutes cleaning window, that will gonna be 72 windows. And if Siri spends like all time like making cookies, that will gonna be like 90 cookies. Like same as L. Like Alexa spends like if Alexa spends like all 180 minutes cleaning windows, like that will gonna be like 90 windows. And if Alexa spends all time making cookies, that will gonna roughly, gonna be 120 cookies. If we compare in a row, like in a column, like you can see like Siri produces like 72 windows and Alexa produces like 98 windows. So here we can say like Alexa wins, right? And for the cookie, also same idea. Siri produces 90 and Alexa produces 120. Again, Alexa wins. So that is the reason we say Alexa has absolute advantage in both activities. So now we stopped here. Like, maybe like we can conclude like, okay, Alexa should do everything because like that sounds reasonable or something. She's better at both, like, or something like that. But we shouldn't stop over here. That is the reason like we're gonna move on to comparative advantage. So now we're gonna like calculate like opportunity cost. So like if you remember, like opportunity cost means what you give up to get the something else, right? So let's start with Siri. If Siri devoted like all time to cookies, she could make like 90 cookies, like we calculated before, right? And if she devoted like all time to Windows, she could clean 72, windows over there. So opportunity cost of like one window is becoming 90 divided by 72. Cause yeah. So it is about like 1.25 cookies. This means that every additional like window costs like Siri 1.25 cookies. And same as well. Like Alexa could make, like 120 cookies or clean 90 windows with the same time, right? So if we divide 120 by 90, which equals about like 1.33, so one window costs like Alexa like 1.33 cookies. So if we compare this, like things are becoming like a little bit different from like previous one. So like Sarah gives up like 1.25 cookies and Alexa gives up like 1.33 cookies. So now Siri gives up less. So here's the reason, like, like why we say like Siri has the like comparative advantage in Windows. If we do the same thing with the cookies, like, 72 divided by like 90 equals like zero point 0.8 windows, and for Alexa, it becomes like 0.75 windows. So now here, like, Alexa gives us fewer windows when making a cookies. So therefore, like Alexa has like comparative advantage in cookies and Siri has the comparative advantage in Windows. And this is how we make a decision like who makes which. So Siri should specialize in window, like Alexa should specialize in cookies. So like, if you remember that Alexa was like better at everything. She had because she had like, like absolute advantage in both activities, right? But still specialization makes sense. That is because like Siri also has the like lower opportunity cost like for window, and that is the reason like economists like focus on comparative advantage rather than like absolute advantage. So like this is like one of the like most common exam questions like in economics. So like whenever you're asked to like who should like specialize, please, you know, like don't look at who produces like more in absolute value, like look at who has the lower opportunity cost. Like that is the most important thing. All right, our last page. So we're gonna wrap up everything together. So today we reviewed like core principles, like there were four we used to think about decision. First one was like cost benefit analysis. Second one was like opportunity cost. And third one was like marginal thinking. And last one was like interdependence, right? Um, then we applied those ideas like to trade. I would say like key takeaway is that trade allows people to become better off through, specialization. And specialization like should be based on, comparative like advantage, not absolute advantage, which I feel like this is like the most important part. So here is the rule I want you to remember. So like specialize where your opportunity cost is lowest, and that's your like, comparative advantage. And if everyone like focuses on what they do at the lowest opportunity cost, like society can produce more. I mean, like with the same limited resources. So that is the reason like trade creates gains, and that is why countries trade, and that is why firms also hire specialists. And like honestly, like the most simple example will gonna be that is the reason like group projects usually work better than everyone has like different responsibilities. So before next class, please make sure like you complete homework two. I just uploaded assigned like homework three as well, so please check it as well. Spend few minutes reviewing comparative advantage calculation because they're very important and very likely to show up on, I don't want to say, but like on quizzes probably and future exams, like of course. So yeah, that is all. Like any questions like before we finish? Do you have anything?
Nope.
All right, good. Then this is all for today. I'll see you guys on next Monday. Thank you.